This is your hometown. You were a paper boy delivering the Gazette years ago. Talk to us about what this publication is to your community, especially at a time when local newspapers are more and more scarce.
Steph, it's a small town. There just aren't that many people here. 30,000 people in Annapolis. The paper, this morning on social media, I saw 3 different people from Annapolis, friends who had been profiled by Wendy Winters. She was one of the journalists who was killed yesterday. And so we call it the crab wrapper here. We say that with affection. But there was nothing remotely political about this paper. Its editorials were straight down the middle, and it very much did the work of a local paper. I keep coming back to Wendy Winters. She was active in my wife's church, and she wrote the Teen of the Week feature. She wrote the Home of the Week feature. This is the work that a local paper does so that we understand who we are. Annapolis is lucky to have a local paper, but I got to tell you, right now where we're standing is outside the city. About 15 years ago, the paper, because it couldn't afford to be in the city, it couldn't afford to have a building above its presses anymore, moved out here outside the city limits. And this is, again, these challenges are happening to papers all over the country. Steph, I got to show you, this is the paper, I subscribe to the Capitol. This is the paper that came to my home this morning. The opinion section is left blank, only the names of the people who were killed. But I have to read to you, tomorrow this page will return to its steady purpose of offering our readers informed opinion about the world around them, that they might be better citizens. And that's the work that local papers do.
Brendan, I'm so sorry. I know how hard this story hits you and your family. Glenn, I want to talk about his defamation suit. Ramos lost his defamation suit against the paper, and authorities are calling this a targeted attack. What does that tell you about a possible motive here?
Well, Stephanie, I think what I found most troubling when I saw the timeline that is emerging, it looks like the original incident with a woman he allegedly stalked started almost a decade ago in 2009. He then filed suit for defamation once the paper printed the column, and then that suit was dismissed in 2012. He appealed that dismissal, and in 2015, an appellate judge similarly dismissed his appeal. Now, I think the question we have to ask ourselves, not only as law enforcement and prosecutors, but just as the American public, why 3 years later does he then choose to take up a weapon, burst into the news organization, and open fire? What is it that inspired him or encouraged him or emboldened him at this moment, 3 years after his appeal was denied, to take up arms and begin killing journalists? We can all speculate about the toxic atmosphere that we seem to be living in right now when there are calls for violence against journalists. But I'll tell you, that was the most troubling aspect of the timeline. From 2015, 3 years later, he decides to open fire.
Jim, can you answer that question? I mean, 2015 was the last time this case got dismissed. And now here we are 3 years later. That's a long time to wait if it's revenge.
Well, when people say that the fella snapped, it's never the case. It's always a simmer and a slow boil. And as Glenn outlined, 10 years here, 7 with the newspaper of a slow pot boiling. This guy is doing all these things. He's not cooperating with detectives right now, Stephanie, but he's already previously put hundreds of postings on Twitter about the Gazette, some direct threats back in 2013 and talking about wanting to see reporters dead. This guy talked about Charlie Hebdo on his Twitter when he had a feud with the paper. This guy was hiding in plain sight, and I think hopefully the Maryland authorities, when they get through the case, will go back and do a hot wash after action report. Because if there was a possibility of making charges against this guy for these threats previously, maybe he would have been convicted of a felony threat, and he couldn't have purchased this shotgun so easily.
Isn't that amazing? Someone with hundreds of Twitter posts, previous threats, saying he wants to go after them, and that guy can walk in and take a gun. Jim, what can you tell us? Help me understand how he obscured his fingerprints, making his identification difficult, and they identified him by using facial recognition software. What do you make of that?
Yeah, this guy thinks he's too clever by half, Stephanie. He thought he could get by. He's kind of to make his threats a little bit veiled. He seems he's very clever. Even when he talked to his original victim, "You can't do anything to me," that goes hand in hand with maybe him trying to destroy his fingerprints. And he might have thought he could have escaped this killing. He didn't come with, bandoleros of ammunition and such. He had some smoke grenades and the shotgun. A pump shotgun might carry 7 rounds. He had to reload. So I think there's a possibility here. This guy thought he could do this escape, but he didn't plan on Anne Arundel County PD being so fast. And that kind of caught him unaware. He's not going to like jail. He's an obsessive guy. He's mad all the time. He's obstinate at everybody. This is a guy that has a lot of conflicts in his life and collects grudges. He collects them, he saves them, and then he boils them. And this is a guy that can be seen by authorities and police and mental health professionals. We just got to look. And we got to do even minimal security on every business, because every business, every place of work, school, office, there's somebody related to somebody who knows somebody about that business, domestic issues, money issues that could be a threat. And we got to open our eyes and take some basic minimum security procedures, locking the door, some cameras, a buzzer access. Don't let a guy you know for 7 years just walk in and start slaughtering you.
Brendan, before we go, take me back to Annapolis. A reporter for the Gazette, Chase Cook, posted this tweet last night. "I can tell you this, we're putting out a damn paper tomorrow." I mean, that tweet, it really embodies the spirit of these hardworking local journalists. I want you to talk to us about the impact on a personal level, especially when it happens this close to home.
Steph, I came here last night and I covered this like the hundreds of other journalists who were here. That's what we do. You've done this. You go to the place where things are happening and you do your best to try and explain to the world what you know. I went home after that, and my kids were still up, and one of my daughters asked me whether I was still safe, and I said, no, look, I just work in an office, and sometimes offices are dangerous, and at a press room is just exactly like any other office. And then I thought, well, is that any better? I don't know. There's been a lot of talk on social media among Annapolitans about being Annapolis strong, and I think that's okay. I don't feel that. I feel like I want to be a citizen of America where this doesn't happen strong. I want to be that kind of strong. So look, we're going through what you go through. People know people at the Capitol. We're all talking about it, and we're sad. But this will roll on. This story will move on, and this will still be a thing that happens in America. And I'm at a loss to understand how it is that it keeps happening, to be honest. I don't know. I talked last night to the police chaplain at Annapolis, and she said that she was amazed at how many active shooter drills that companies in the building had been through. They were prepared for this. And she said, I don't think we understand that no place is safe.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.